if there's any way you can look at diversity, that's really an important part to our culture. They connect with them individually early on.
Should there be more STEM schools for U.S. students? Should there be other ways to build that market?
Welcome to the LITES podcast, Leaders in Industrial Technology, Education, and Safety, where we interview thought leaders in construction and heavy industry during this exciting time of rapid innovation. In this episode, ITI's Zack Parnell sits down with Casey and John Welch of Tallo to discuss their platform for connecting students, schools, and companies with a focus on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics-related career paths.
Well, thanks for joining us today, John and Casey. I'm excited to learn about Tallo and share with folks on the LITES podcast about your company and who you guys are. So, John, could you start maybe by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Again, my name's John Welch. I'm one of the co-founders of a company that was originally called STEM Premier that is now, as of last week, the name has been changed to Tallo. And we'll go into that a little bit later. My background primarily has been in the energy sector. I worked in all phases of the natural gas business, from exploration, production, transmission, distribution, up through some of the compressing station and storage side. Personally, I love to run a backhoe and a bulldozer, a little bit of color from that side of it. In my very early days in the gas company, that's kind of where I started too. I'm kind of the old guy on the call here, and I'm kind of at the baby boomer age side. But what I recognized about 10 years ago when I was phasing out of the energy sector was that I wasn't the only person that was phasing out at that point. The workforce was becoming a big issue, our future workforce that would come in. And that's kind of what really got me interested in being able to do something to help provide not only opportunities for talent, but opportunities for companies to be able to address the aging workforce and all the new opportunities that were coming in the future.
So yeah, it's funny, we were joking before the show started here that I work with my father, and so for those that don't see our faces right now, if you're listening through a podcast, Casey Welch is on the phone as well, and John's son. So Casey, please share a little bit about yourself and co-founding the business with your dad.
Yeah, happy to do so, Zack. And obviously mine's a lot shorter, not nearly as robust. But basically, and I think it'll come out to play as we talk a little bit later, but my background came from a small rural town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania originally. Could kick a football far, so I got seen, got opportunities, and eventually had the opportunity to be a kicker and punter at Purdue University. That comes back into play a little bit later on. But also then after graduating college, pursued and worked for Citigroup for a number of years in a technology development leadership program, and then going in and doing global-based security for Citigroup. So helping to manage teams across the country in that sector. So very different sector necessarily than I went to school for. Saw an opportunity, connected there, and then had the opportunity to reconnect with John, my father, and one of our other co-founders from the education arena, Dr. Don Talinsky, to really team up and create Tallo and build it into what it's become today.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm excited to dive into Tallo. So, the LITES podcast is really about leadership in industrial technology, education, and safety. And the skilled labor shortage is a big problem that we focus on and try and help employers navigate. Everyone's trying to solve the same problem in a lot of Western economies. So yeah, let's dive into Tallo. How was the company founded, and how did you all come up with the idea?
I was doing some consulting for a company in the Midwest that was in the defense space. Now, my consulting part of this was looking at military bases, strategic ones, and basically looking at taking them off the grid for security purposes. But it happened to be with a small defense contractor. Well, what kept coming up, they were part of the NDIA, the National Industry Defense Association. And some of the large companies that were part of that group, like the Rolls-Royces, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, all kept bringing up the issue with finding talent. What kind of started to begin with was more on the STEM fields and in the engineering fields, because a lot of the work they did was classified, and you had to have a U.S. citizenship to do that work. So they knew the talent was out there, but there was really no way to find it. You know, we thought, you know, there's an opportunity here. Should there be more STEM schools for U.S. students? Should there be other ways to build that market? We knew that the talent was out there, but how could we capture that? So Casey happened to be home from Chicago, and we were talking, and the president of the engineering company was also there. And it came up in this issue, and Casey just kind of looked at us and said, well, that's simple. Just take a page out of the athletic world. That's why his comment about athletics was kind of important to begin with, that there's companies out there like Rivals.com or what knows where every athlete in the country from a very young age. And these athletes build their own profiles. They put their videos together and they're seen. So the next step that we kind of needed was, I had a strong corporate background, Casey strong in the IT, in the athletic world, using the model we wanted to use, but then we needed somebody that really knew the education space well. And another person from the same small town that I grew up with was a superintendent of a major high school in Pennsylvania, and was twice superintendent of the year in technology. And I talked with him, and I, told him this issue and a potential solution. And he said, this sounds great. So for literally a year almost, Casey and Dawn, almost 100% of their time focused on this, and me for a large part to solve it. But that was the inspiration that drove us. It was to solve a problem, not create a company, then try to sell something that no one needed.
Here's a word from our sponsor. We asked Jim Doris, Vice President of Health and Safety at United Rentals, how does the company think about its customer workforce development challenges?
A major challenge related to training and workforce development is in relevant and diverse content and training delivery methods. United Academy, through United Rentals' 1,000 locations, solves this problem.
What content and delivery methods does United Academy offer? To find out, go to unitedacademy.ur.com. That's unitedacademy.ur.com. Now, back to the show.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for that background. And I noticed I don't know if it's your mission statement, but it's certainly a tagline, is connecting the future of tomorrow. So please share, how are you accomplishing that today? And let's maybe dive into you've got a really interesting case study with Cummins North America, for example, that you shared with me prior that might tell the story well.
Yeah, happy to do so. As we look at it, again, connecting that talent with opportunity is what we did. And, if we, again, talking about the sports aspect and looking how they do that, if you think about colleges, right, whether it's Nick Saban or whatever team you're at, they don't start recruiting, their next class when they're senior. They connect with them individually early on. They start connecting as freshmen, sophomore, to build that talent. They're also doing another thing when they're doing that, right? They're connecting directly with the end user. If you think about how a lot of the education and corporate relationships work, right? It's companies that go to a school once, right? And they send that message, and they hope that message resonates down through principals to guidance counselors to teachers to hopefully getting down to the student. And that's one way to do it. we looked at it and said, how do we make it more efficient? How do we make it like the world of sports? When I was recruited, right, the coach came up and they called two people, right? They called me and they called my parents. And that was the way to get that message. And we said, how do we deliver it in that same mechanism and same way? Cummins Diesel has a great diesel technician apprenticeship program called TAP. It's a great opportunity for a student to pursue a 2-year degree. They'll pay for it. They'll pay them, $16+ an hour. They were giving them $10,000 in Snap-on tools for students to come into this program. And I think they hire over 200 a year. So we first got a relationship with them and they said, hey, how can you help us connect with the talent? And they told us what they were looking for. And we said, okay, tell us the other attributes that you're looking for, not just students that want to be diesel technicians, but what else are you interested in? And they gave us that list and we said, okay. So they told us where we wanted. They said, hey, we're looking in this geographic area. We're about ready to fill it up. We only have 2 spots left. Can you help us fill those? And if there's any way you can look at diversity, that's really an important part to our culture. And we take great seriousness in that. Can you help us with that? We said, absolutely. So we went out with a targeted communication for them. Within 24 hours, I think we got them 36 qualified applicants, 10 were female, and they said they had 2 spots. They ended up hiring 5 of them. So it worked really well in an area of Indiana. Now we're doing that across the country and helping them to fill the over 200 opportunities that they can happen. So delivering those results in hours and weeks versus sometimes when you think about workforce that measures results in months and years. That's what we hope to do.
Yeah, excellent. And I know that listeners might not be able to see our screen right now, but this is very similar. I mean, sort of a similar setup, obviously, to LinkedIn. LinkedIn was started as a social network for professionals. That was sort of what it was showcased as, and it's certainly developed into an excellent sales tool and recruiting tool, but it's definitely for fairly experienced people, I would say, as well as more business professionals than maybe the craft workforce, for example. I loved how on Tallo's website it looked like you had over 400,000 people so far on the network, and I believe the vast majority, if not the majority, were high school or younger. Is that true?
Yeah, so and some of it we got to update a little bit, Zach, but if you look at the matriculating population, all future workforce goes through high school. We talked a little bit about that earlier. And so, last year, if you looked at our population, it was about 80% high school, 20% college. We had a big transition. Now we're about 50-50, high school to college, a little bit of professional in there as that some of those matriculated right into the workforce. But because the platform allows them to stay on it versus coming into it down the road, like you mentioned, sometimes we get compared to kind of like a LinkedIn for the next generation. They kind of are coming down. We're transitioning to up from the bottom and also helping to bring in some of those groups that really aren't represented in more of that network aspect.
There's something I'd kind of like to add there too, and especially with LinkedIn, kind of how I like to explain it. Okay, LinkedIn will tell you what I have done. Tallo tells you what I want to do. It'll have my past, but it says this is what I want to do going forward.
Let's take a quick break to learn more about our sponsor, United Rentals. Jim Doris, Vice President of Health and Safety at United Rentals, had mentioned the diverse course content and delivery methods offered by United Academy to solve workforce development challenges. Let's find out more.
With over 350 plus unique course titles that are delivered at over 600 United Rentals locations and online and through VR simulation, United Academy boasts the single largest training and qualification reach in the construction and industrial skills training industry.
To learn more about United Rentals and United Academy, visit unitedacademy.ur.com. That's unitedacademy.ur.com. Now, back to the show.
Tallo is highly focused on connecting organizations to talent looking for jobs. That's probably the best way to explain that differentiation. And speaking of the employer side, let's talk about the whole ecosystem. So Tallo definitely is the major user group is the talent. However, you talk about your ecosystem with career readiness, which are really providers of curriculum and courses and certificates, talent seekers, corporations, colleges, government, et cetera, and then resources like financial aid. But can you sort of talk to us a little bit about the whole ecosystem of stakeholders?
So when you look at that, and I think you hit it on the head, Zach, is we look at this and you look at the workforce, and it really is a community, and it takes all of those attributes to pull together. And, when you bring them together, one of the big factors that we saw is, what's the platform? What's the one environment or community that they can all work together? And so when you look at it, again, you mentioned, we're over, 400,000 on the talent side using it, working with over 300 colleges and companies across the country, big and small, from the, Boeings to Cummins to BMW, Walmarts of the world, to, the Penn States, the Clemsons, the two-year colleges, bringing that together. It is all part of that. You also talk about the career readiness aspect of it. One of our big investments and partners we just brought in is an organization called K-12, and they represent a lot of the online and blended learning curriculum across the country, one of the largest providers, but really has made a push, getting their talent with the right credentials, the right certificates on that career readiness path so that they're ready and connecting them in the opportunities. So bringing in different entities like that really go to the workforce and being able to showcase all of those. When you look at it, one of the aspects you mentioned was governmental entities. Right now we actually were brought to South Carolina to launch Tallo originally. We were brought here because, they have a great problem. They have a ton of great companies that have moved here to the area, and they want to make sure that they could produce the future workforce with the skills that they were looking for. And one of the aspects is they understood is they have great curriculum in their two-year colleges. They have great in the four-year. They had great certificates and education to support it. But how do you foster and facilitate it through it? And you need a platform to do that. So, we have a state partnership there, Zach. We've brought in an ecosystem of the Department of Education to bring on the high school talent in the state. We work with a lot of the 2- and 4-year colleges in the state to connect and build through that. And then we work with, over 100 employers in the state. They are key in high demand areas that now have that ability to connect with the workforce earlier and drive them to that path, whether it might be 2-year, 4-year, military, or maybe right into the workforce. So that's how everybody can kind of be involved in this ecosystem. We're just that platform to be able to connect it all.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. I love how South Carolina is just putting their flag in the ground on advanced manufacturing and aiming to be one of the leading states in that sector. So yeah, please tell us more about the SCFuture Makers platform. So it sounds like you have established Tallo as essentially the conduit for that whole ecosystem, from all the employers there, all the high schools, colleges, tech schools, and aid, as well as major employers. So would you mind rattling off several of the employers involved and other folks essentially trying to place workers?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it is really interesting, right? South Carolina is really taking a proactive, progressive approach to the future workforce and really pulling together the key players, So we work very closely with the South Carolina Manufacturers Alliance, which represents about 200 of the large manufacturers in the state. But they also pulled together a group of them, the Department of Commerce, so Secretary Bobby Hitt behind it, who's done, a fantastic job in bringing some of the, best companies in the world here to the state, to the Department of Education from the state superintendent and Molly Spearman, to other entities that they're focusing on, like logistics is a big area here, and aerospace and the IT community, really bringing it together and saying, we need to look at this differently, right? We can't keep doing the same things the same ways and expect different outcomes. And so what they did was, help driven by the Manufacturers Alliance, was come out with a, really a marketing campaign, an awareness campaign called SCFuture Makers, which was, here's the story, right? Here's the opportunity. Manufacturing is not dirty like it used to be, right? We're not just textile companies. We're very progressive. How do you tell that story of what that looks like? which a lot of states do, right? If you think about from workforce initiative, different programs. The unique thing is we teamed up and said, if we're going to do this, let's team up together and say, what's next? So we got people excited about it, right? We got people excited about these industries, the opportunities. We need a way to connect them, especially while they're excited. That's where we brought in Tallo, so that SCFuture Makers is powered by Tallo to really connect that whole thing so they don't lose that momentum throughout it. Some of the key stakeholders you mentioned, we work with Boeing, we work with BMW, we work with Blackbaud from the IT sector, a lot of the tire manufacturers, different sides. We work closely with Clemson, right, the state land grant, as well as the technical colleges in the state that are helping bringing that together in an ecosystem, as well as the higher ed. They're doing a lot of great things, and they're placing these kids in jobs, in careers where they're making great living, which, that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
John and Casey, thank you so much for joining today. I'm very excited about our listeners here at LITES getting plugged into Tallo. You can check out Tallo at tallo.com. That's TALLO.com. John and Casey, we hope to have you back, and I am excited to get down to South Carolina and meet the team here shortly.
And thank you again, Zach, for giving us the opportunity, and we commend ITI for doing everything you're doing, and looking forward to working with you in the future.
It's been a pleasure, Zach. Thanks for the opportunity. Looking forward to hopefully connecting here in the future, tracking our progress, and helping connect the future workforce pipeline.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to LITES, leaders in industrial technology, education, and safety. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Our guests today were Casey and John Welch of Tallo. Our producer is me, Michael Montaigne. The LITES podcast is a production of Industrial Training International. See more at lites.org.